Hello everyone, we are Senior Design Teams 26 and this is our switch configuration project. Our sponsors for this project is Sonalists, a professional services business based in Connecticut. They provide many services, including application development and model and simulation-based training for the Department of Defense. Many of their projects involve model-based systems engineering, which is the practice of using models to communicate information and simulate real-world event and engineering problems. We use model-based systems engineering in our own project, the goal of which is to develop a model of an Arista switch, which automatically generates switch configuration files and does not require manual updating. The reason why we wanted to develop a model which does not require manual updating was because it can be very time and labor intensive and becomes harder to manage as the network grows and adds more switches and routers. Our solution to this problem was to create a model of an Arista switch in Cameo Systems modeler and configure the output from that model to that of a real switch. From a high-level perspective, our solution is to use Cameo Magic Draw to export an XML file to a parser, which generates configuration files for routers and switches connected to the network.
And here's a brief overview of what Cameo System Modeler is. Cameo is a model-based systems engineering software that allows us to create SysML models and diagrams. SysML, or Systems Modeling Language, is a general architecture modeling language for systems engineering applications. We're using Cameo to mainly model the Arista switch, along with other components necessary to create a network model, such as hosts, VLANs, Ethernet interfaces, ACLs that are connected to the Arista switches. We create an internal block diagram, IBD, to model the switch and display the internal properties of each component.
Let us look at the image on the left. In the Containment tab, we have a tree list view of what our model consists of, that being multiple switches, ACL, ACL rule, Ethernet interface, host, loopback interface, management interface, switch, and VLAN interface. These are components we deemed essential for a functional network model. Now, the image on the right is the internal block diagram that contains all the components listed above, while also displaying their internal property values, which we use as sort of a template for a better view as a system engineer. Finally, as Elaine mentioned before, one important feature that Cameo has is the ability to export our model as an XML file where we can parse through it to extract the value using our software.
Now let's go into a little bit more detail about our software solution. So here on the right we have a high-level software architecture diagram, just basically detailing how our software actually works. So we have our Cameo Magic Draw model, and then we export an XML file from the Cameo model, and we take that as input to our software. And then we pass this exported XML file into our software, and there is an XML parser that we use in Python 3 that extracts all the network components and values found in the Cameo model, like IP addresses, protocols, and other attributes. And then it generates switch configuration files based on those extracted values. And finally, our software will output the switch configuration files and then load the new and updated configurations onto each switch via SSH. Alright, and now here's just a little bit more detail about the exporting the Cameo model as an XML file. So Cameo Systems Modeler actually comes with a couple of plugins for exporting Cameo models to different file formats, and the file format that we chose was XML, and we used this exact XML exporting plugin right here, and then it kind of exports it into this nice readable XML format that our software can parse through. So you can see here that this is an IP address of a switch Ethernet 1 interface. So it's kind of just found in the XML tags and values, and it's just easier for us to parse through. Alright, so here's just a little demo in GNS3 just to show how our software works. So here we have just this virtual computer here that I have our software loaded on. And then we have two Arista switches that are connected to this main switch right here. And then we have this NAT cloud, which just gives us access to the internet just for this computer right here. So if I go to the terminals of each computer, so we have our main computer here. We have our first Arista switch. So if I do a show run, you can see all that's configured is one VLAN on this switch, and then one VLAN on this switch. So to run our code, we do Python 3 network config.py, and then we pass in the input XML from the Cameo model. Then if I run that, so this is all the extracted information from the XML that our software found. And then it's going to create switch objects using the interface info, and then it's going to generate switch configuration files, and then it's going to load new configurations onto the switches, and then this tells you the physical commands that it's typing into each switch. So if I go back to each switch, you can see that these additional VLANs were configured, and Ethernet 1 and Ethernet 2 were configured. So same thing with this switch as well. Ethernet 1 and Ethernet 2, and then these additional VLANs were added as well.